Great. And the recording will be put onto the library website sometime soon. We shall see. Welcome. How's it going? Just doing some announcements that we're recording. So if you want to mute, you're more than welcome to. And I have my eyes on the chat. So yes, my name is Greg Bem. I'm a faculty librarian here at SCC, and this is the GenAI hands-on spotlight for Gemini. We're going to be covering Gemini specifically today, which is Google's large language model generative artificial intelligence product and platform. This is the first time that we're doing this focus on Gemini, so I'm pretty excited to be running it today. We've got folks both online and in person. So let's get started with some introductions. Feel free to unmute or use the chats. What brings you here today? What are you interested in with this session in particular? Anyone like to start? What's the difference between this one and the other one? So between Gemini and other GenAI products. Okay, great. Anyone online want to contribute? Okay, well, if you want to chime in the chat, feel free. We are going to move on from the intros, but thank you all for being here nonetheless. Today's session, we're going to be covering a few things, just like with the session that we had on Claude, which we ran a couple weeks ago. This one will be starting off with a comment on caution and curiosity. Then we will talk a little bit about Gemini, just the basics. And then we're going to break out of the PowerPoint and go into the interface, and I'll provide a demonstration on what the interface is, some highlights on how to use the tool before we move into guided demonstrations and explore with the remaining time. So we are at 10:05 and we will wrap up by 10:50. As with the other spotlight sessions, this is really about what you want to get out of it. So if at any point you want me to stop and explore something, or you have a question or comment about a feature or aspect of this platform, please interrupt me and we can dive into that rabbit hole together. So I want to just comment briefly about caution and curiosity. For those of you that have had sessions with me before, you will have heard this before. This is really the approach that I recommend with technology in general, and it is the approach that I personally take when it comes to using technology, when it comes to using emerging technology, and how it applies to ourselves in education, as students, as educators, and also out there in the world, in our professional lives and our personal lives. This really dwells and dives into critical thinking and thinking about how we use technology and what we're using it for, what we're getting out of it. On one end of the spectrum, there is extreme caution and rejection of technology. And on the other end of the spectrum, there is the total embrace and acceptance of the technology. And I think that we might use the words caution and curiosity, or being closed or being open, to represent that spectrum. And in our lives, I think it's important to be in the middle, because in many ways, the technology that is around us, whether it is a book or a phone or a GenAI tool or something else completely, that technology is going to be emerging and situating itself in our lives in ways that we do or do not have control over, and in ways that other people, including our peers, including our coworkers, including our bosses, including our family, our children, etc., they're going to be using it or not using it. So by being somewhere in between caution and curiosity, or by exercising both caution and curiosity, we may find ourselves in a really good position to be adaptable to different contexts. I'm not encouraging everyone to embrace Gen AI, and I'm not encouraging anyone to reject Gen AI, but I am encouraging you to think about Gen AI today and think about where you might apply it or not after this session is over. Does that make sense? Do you have any thoughts on that or where you stand, anyone online or in the room, about where you stand with caution and curiosity at this point? Okay, then. Quiet group today. That's okay. I'm not quiet, so I'll make up for everyone. Let's keep going. So in this session, we are focused on Gemini. You can get most of this information both online through the Gemini website, as well as Wikipedia and other sources. You can also get access to this information by using Gemini itself. So Gemini was initially launched by Google in March of 2023. It was initially called Bard. You may have heard of Bard when it came out because it was kind of a big deal. It showed up a lot in the news. It was kind of one of the first Gen AI platforms using its own large language model to really blow up, to get really popular after ChatGPT and Microsoft Copilot, which at that time was Bing Chat. So Bard was kind of one of those initial products or tools that came onto the scene earlier in the popularity of Gen AI tools. And it's continued to become more and more popular because it's continued to become more integrated into a lot of what we see with Google. And if anyone here is familiar with phones like Android smartphones, or you use Google as a search engine, or you use other Google products, you may start to see Gemini in those Google products. For example, the new Pixel phones have Gemini built into them. The new Android operating system, whether you're using Samsung or another Android phone, is going to have a lot of this Gemini technology in it, whether it's through specific apps or the Gemini app itself, the main app that you can download through the Play Store. So it's getting quite, I don't want to say universal, but ubiquitous. It's becoming more and more present and popular where we look, which makes sense because Google has been established and in a lot of places for the general public already. Gemini is defined as a family of large language models. So we learned about that similarly at the last workshop with Claude, which is also a family of LLMs. And those are all the different LLMs that are situated underneath the different apps and the different ways that we interact with the chatbot. So similar to other LLMs like ChatGPT and Claude, Gemini can be accessed mostly through these different chatbot or chat interfaces, which we will be looking at today. The latest release, as far as I know, something could have changed today, of course, is Gemini 2, which was released in summer of 2024. As I mentioned, Gemini is the product of Google. And so there's a lot of money and a lot of resources into the development of it. And it can generate a lot of different types of content, including images. And it can also edit images. We will see that. And it's not without controversy. You can look up Gemini image controversy. You can Google that to learn more about it. But there have been numerous issues with the Gemini images that have come out, specifically where it relates to bias and historical inaccuracies. One of the famous ones that made a lot of headlines was this emphasis that Google has had on positive representation and diversity in their images, especially images of people, which seems like a good thing on the surface, but it was creating a lot of problems, or it resulted in a lot of problems with this one specific example where people were asking it to generate images of Nazi soldiers and German SS soldiers. And it was doing so, and it was also doing so by making the Nazi officers very racially diverse. And a lot of people had a lot of problems with that, knowing that Nazi Germany was very not racially diverse, and it was mostly, Caucasian men who made up the, the German army and the Nazi regime. So that's an example, made a lot of headlines. Even now, you can't create images of people because they're still working out how they want to respond to some of those issues in the past. One other thing to note, and we will see this, it's not commonly referred to at this point, but similar to ChatGPT having DALL-E as the image generation tool inside of ChatGPT, Gemini has an image generation tool called Imagen, which is, image generation. It sounds kind of like a person's name. Okay, any questions or thoughts or contributions about GenAI before we go into the demonstration? Okay, let us do so. So today, similar to last time, we are going to do these three things today. We're going to review the user interface of Gemini. We're going to understand the basic functionality. So what can Gemini do? And maybe we can find out also what it cannot do. And then we will test that functionality with different prompts. And I, of course, have an endless supply of ideas in my brain about what we can do with these tools. But I want to emphasize that, this is for you, participants today. And those of you that are watching the recording, I want you to consider what are ways that you could test this as well. So please contribute if you have ideas or examples, and we will go through the testing of the functionality based on what you want to learn about, how you want to test it. Okay, so I'm using Firefox here, and I'm breaking out of the PowerPoint, and I'm heading over to Gemini. The URL for Gemini is gemini.google.com. You could also just search for it in a search engine and find it pretty quickly. So similar to the other apps that we've explored, it has a very similar, relatively simple interface. We'll start at the top. You have this menu on the left-hand side here that allows you to see your chat history, all of these different prompts. So you can also pin certain conversations and rename them and delete them. Then there's some extra functionality down below that we're not going to dive into today, but some extra menus that you can explore. You can update your location, which I believe may contextualize some of the responses you get, similar to the Google search engine. Very much identical to ChatGPT. There's the Gemini drop down here. And we are using a free version of Gemini. So there's two LLMs that are listed here. Gemini with 1.5 Flash and Gemini Advanced with 1.5 Pro. Now I mentioned Gemini 2 exists. I am not sure exactly how you get access to that, but you could probably find out pretty easily by doing a quick search for that. There, of course, is an easy button here to upgrade or do a trial run of Gemini Advanced. You can access your other Google apps here, and then your account, your Google account is listed in the upper right-hand side if you want to change accounts. I believe you do have to log in to access Gemini at this point. So that is a thing to note, what Google account are you using? If you are signed into your account, just be aware, with these tools and the accounts that you use and the information that is connected to your account, that there may be some privacy issues in there. I'm currently using an account that I just use for work. So it's not my, personal email Gmail account. It's like a secondary Gmail. And I recommend those kinds of practices when you're using tools like this. As I say with every GenAI session, you're not going to want to put any of your personal information into here. Don't put your credit card, your address, your social security number. Never do anything with that with these GenAI tools. They might talk about privacy, but we don't know for sure where that information is going to go or be stored. And also, these companies get hacked all the time. So even if they aren't going to use your personal data for specific things, someone else could potentially sneak in there and get it. So best to play it safe with GenAI tools. One thing I like to point out, and I've actually been saving this for this session today. This tool, Gemini, does provide updates and latest information in this blue bar at the top that you can close out of if you want to. But if I click on See Update, it will tell me release updates. So they'll talk about some of their special features and functionality. And you can go back through the different releases all the way back. You can also see, I want to highlight that Gemini has, they are updating it really consistently. There was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 updates in October alone, platform updates. So what does this mean for all of us as users? There's a lot going on. And even this session today, like what I'm covering, tomorrow, literally, there could be an update that changes how things work. And there may be a lot of changes within the month itself. So your commitment to these tools and these platforms probably should consider staying up to date and being on top of how they are updating it and what they're doing to change their tools. So I also want to point out this fun line here: to improve Google AI for everyone, reviewers read some chats. You can manage this in settings. So this can be, another thing to think about when it comes to privacy. So I clicked on that, and then I am taken to a list of my chats, but also general ways to manage how my chats are stored and how they're interacted with, etc. So keep that in mind as well. Beneath all of that, we get to what we're here for today, and that is looking at the platform itself. This is the space in the center of the screen where the conversation, the chat, will happen. And just like all of the other tools we've looked at, and most of them in the world, there is the prompt bar below where it says Ask Gemini. We also have this ability to upload an image. As I mentioned, the chat bot with Gemini can review and edit images. And there's also this ability, I think it's mostly for accessibility, to use your microphone if you don't want to use, if you don't want to type out your prompt. And last time we had the demonstration on Claude, we also had a participant who used their phone and noticed some differences in the UI when you're on your mobile device in the browser. And of course, there's also the mobile app as well And there's going to be some differences across all of these modes of interaction. I'm noticing now, I'm just looking at it on my phone here, that the Gemini interface is pretty similar on the phone as it is on the browser. But if anyone is using their phone today and wants to chime in on differences that you see, please feel free. Let's zoom in here. And now we're going to do some understanding of functionality. I see time check, we've got about 30 minutes left. So if I say, well, let's ask anyone here what we should enter for our first prompt today, just to see how Gemini will respond. Feel free to throw an example in the chat as well, or shout it out. Okay, in the room we have, what programming languages can Gemini program in? All right, so it's generating now, and Gemini can generate code in a variety of programming languages, including popular languages like Python, Java, etc., and other languages like Ruby, PHP, Rust, SQL, and others. Gemini can also understand and generate code in different programming paradigms, such as object-oriented, functional, and procedural programming. And one thing I like to point out is, when a platform is going to provide additional sources or ways to learn more or verify what you're looking at. And in some cases, the content is pulling directly from these online or external sources, and in some cases, it's just referring to them to supplement. So here we have an example of that. It links to a blog by Google that describes what Gemini is and what it can do. A couple other things at the top. You can, I just clicked on this. You can show drafts. So these are variations on the response that it's provided, which is kind of interesting because it shows a variety of differences in the response. Mostly the same content, but in this case, it's also providing differences in structure. So here we have the same content from the first response, but in a bulleted list, and it's providing more information. It breaks it all out a little bit further. And then at the bottom, it's showing additional sources to where it got its information. Why does it do this? I think because with the different types of display of the content and the variations on how the content is displayed, that might be different or I should say, received differently by different readers, different learners. So someone might be satisfied with this super simplistic, quick answer. Someone might be a little bit more interested in seeing the full list or the breakout. Now, depending on what type of content you're generating, let's say you were asking it for a template for a schedule, the variations in how it presents that template might be more useful to you than one variation might be more useful than others. And then at the bottom of the response, we have the ability to rate the response. You can share this conversation. You can double check the response. And I'm actually curious about what this looks like. I'm going to click on that in a second. And then we can copy the response text. And if there's any issue we have, we can report that. So let's see what double check the response does. Clicking on that, I believe. Okay, so it generated these searches, which we can, which link to search results. And then it highlights a bunch of the information in the response. What happens if I click on this first highlight link? It's not a link, it's a little box. So it essentially aligns the text that it's providing with the text that is found from the source that is cited in this response. That's pretty cool. You can follow the, we call it the breadcrumbs. You can follow the breadcrumbs to find the source information with how it generated this. Do you have any follow-up questions on this that I could ask it? How about this? Can you show me an example of a snippet of code in, let's do, is there anyone you want to see? In Java. Okay. I'm curious to see how it will present computer code. So here we go. A classic example, if you're in programming, is this this ability to create a string that says hello world, and that is what it did here. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Java. Does this look like accurate, or it's pretty accurate? One thing to note is that it does have a cautionary note, use code with caution. Curious what that says. It looks like it leads you to a FAQ page for Gemini, and down below there is a note that says you should use it with discretion and carefully test and review all code for errors, bugs, and vulnerabilities. So a couple other notes about the FAQ. It also does provide these great critical thinking questions, tells us about hallucinations and what it means, what they look like, what we can do, and that we do need to use our best judgment, and that Gemini is not a doctor, lawyer, or a professional. That's great. Another one, why can Gemini get things wrong? This is all really great. I'm not going to read it together, but I highly recommend taking a look at these if you're interested and want to learn more about the problems of these platforms. Just to follow up on this response, it also, it says it's a classic program, that Hello World program, and then it breaks down what is going on in the program, how each line is working. So it's providing some educational information. And it asks, or it informs you the process through which to run this code. Now, if you're in programming, you know probably how to run a Java file through the compiler. And then that would get you to see the results of this program. If you don't, let's say you were just doing this randomly and you were not a computer programmer, you might ask, what does it mean to compile? Or what is a Java compiler? Or what is an example? How do I get this to all work? You can explore that on your own. Just like we've seen in other workshops, or if you've used a GenAI tool before, all of this is conversational. You can refer back to these prompts and go from there. Any thoughts or questions on this so far? How does it feel to see this at this point with the computer programming?
It's pretty useful to help out with certain tools and stuff.
Is there anything more advanced you'd like to see? This is pretty simple for computer programming. But is there anything more advanced that you might consider bringing into your work, or something more specific than just a simple program like was displayed there? Or even a topic that you're thinking about this week in your class?
basic scheduling program.
Okay. Would you like it in Java?
Uh,
Okay. So the question or the suggestion was, can you create a basic scheduling program in Python? So here is a basic Python scheduling program using the schedule library. And you import the schedule library, you import the time, and you're doing this job to run every 5 seconds. I actually don't know what is happening here. Do you have an understanding of this?
Yeah.
A little bit. Does it look relatively accurate? So yes, you may consider testing this, but again, it was able to respond, give the cautionary note, and provide an explanation of what it is doing. And then I do like that it's doing this more complex scheduling. You can customize the scheduling intervals further using the schedule library. And it provides some additional considerations and so on. I think it's interesting. Are you familiar with the pickle library? Not familiar with that. Okay, so that was one example. Anyone online want to steer things in a different direction as an example for a new chat? Just to see how it might generate something completely different. We've covered computer programming in a basic way. Writing a proposal template. Okay. All right, let's see this. Let me just ask it if it can do it first. Can you help me write a proposal template? So, unlike some other GenAI tools that are a little bit more, I should say, humanistic, human-like, often Gemini, I feel, is a little bit less personal, less personable. The tone is a little bit more professional and direct. So sometimes, though, you'll see the tone come out like here we have. Absolutely. But anyway, so basic proposal template, and then it's providing the proposal title, and then using these numerical headers, executive summary, and then it describes what you should do in this section: introduction, proposed solution, project timeline, budget, theme, evaluation and measurement, risk assessment, conclusion. And then again, similar to what we saw in the last example, it's providing things to consider, additional tips, and it's offering to go deeper into a specific section or explore a particular type of proposal. Is there anything you'd like me to continue this conversation with, such as delving deeper or exploring something more specific? Okay. Type of proposal. Options for a new program at the college. Interesting. So, let's see. Let me know if this sounds good to you. I work for a college and want to develop a new academic program. Can you help me write a proposal for this? Is that something that you're thinking? Okay. So it's going to be, I will say, very similar to what we saw earlier, but with some specificities and specific updates based on this need. So we're going to have the proposal title will have the program name. And then underneath each of the sections, instead of having general recommendations, it is providing specific recommendations for this new program. What is the market need or the gap that the program will fill? Describing the curriculum, delivery method, and so on and so forth. We get into the meat of it when we go down to number 3 with the program description, describing the needs to talk about the curriculum, the degree level, delivery method, and so on and so forth. Not going to go into all of these, but at a glance, how does this look? Does this look helpful? And then, as it says, you can have it delve deeper if you want. Now, let's say I want to generate an example introduction for a new program on GenAI studies. Not sure if GenAI studies is a reasonable program, of course, but let's just use that as a fun-filled example. Introduction to the GenAI Studies program, a new frontier in learning and innovation. So it provided a subtitle too, or maybe that's the introduction. And then it's providing, the introduction text and going on and on with that. But one thing I will say is it doesn't seem to align it directly with everything that it's asking you to put in the introduction or the executive summary above. So keep that in mind. I'm not sure if it's briefly describing the curriculum and delivery method, but it still does seem to provide a robust introduction. I don't know, it seems like it's particularly interesting to read and maybe a captivating introduction, but it may need some tweaking to align with those recommendations it provided earlier as well. Also, this does feel like more of a marketing. There's like some marketing text in here as well. Like whether you're a seasoned technologist or a curious newcomer, our program offers a variety. So yeah, I would probably reframe this if this is going to be a proposal. So, at the time, I want to make sure we get to images. You might say this feels too markety. Markety is maybe not the official term. Let's see if it can understand it. Okay, let's try that. Here we go. This is a little bit better. Academic focused introduction for a proposal to college administration. So a proposal for a new academic program in generative artificial intelligence studies, and the advent of generative artificial intelligence has ushered in a new area. To prepare students for this rapidly evolving landscape, we propose the establishment of a new academic program. And then, it's very, very short, this introduction, and it might need some additional tweaking as well. But I think this is a better step in the right direction for formal language. Okay. We've got about 10 more minutes before we wrap up. So I want to make sure we get into the images. So anyone want to provide an example of a type of image I could ask Gemini to create? It can be literally anything, folks. Don't be shy. All right. And if you're all going to be shy, I'm going to put in a bright pink rabbit. Picture of a bright pink rabbit. Now I want you to see what it will do here, because just because you put in that prompt doesn't mean it's going to create a picture. So in this case, we have an image that was pulled off of this random website. And I'm not even sure what's going on here, but that's a story for another time. But because Gemini is connected to Google and Google has indexed a lot of the internet and the web, it's pulling off an image from the web. I think this is very interesting also because if you know about the computing power that generating images requires, this is kind of a nice way, this is a more aware way of the developers to provide images quickly without using all of that computing power to create something or generate something new. Even though, this is not a great picture, in my humble opinion, of what I'm looking for. So I'm going to update the prompt to, can you generate one instead? Because that's what I really want to get at. So as you can see, it says it's generating the image, creating the image with Imagen. And here is the GenAI image. Let me zoom out. And there is my pink rabbit. Let's update it to photorealistic rabbit. Let me create one for a photorealistic rabbit. That's terrible language, but. And I want to also note that Imagen is really fast. So here it is. It's very interesting, though. I think the details in Imagen are quite good. I don't know if I would call this photorealistic exactly. It perhaps is on its way to photorealistic, but not quite. Still looks like it's, computer generated. And so similar to text responses, you can provide a good response, bad response, you can share, you can copy, you can report legal issue. You can copy the image directly out of here and paste it, which is nice, and you can download the full size. I want to show you what it looks like when they provide that safeguard text. So can you create a picture of a librarian holding a rabbit? And let's see if it prohibits me from generating that. As I mentioned earlier, here we go, yeah. Generating images of people is only available in early access with Gemini Advanced. So right now, the general public is not allowed or open to generating new images. But can you create a rabbit humanoid librarian holding a rabbit? Let's see if that works. Not exactly what I'm looking for, but let's see if it can create it. And if you've ever used AI image generating tools, they can get kind of funny. All right, so there is the rabbit librarian holding a rabbit. Again, not exactly what we're looking for with our initial need for a librarian holding a rabbit, but you could do things like that and get at some of the nuances that we're maybe looking for. Let's see, a couple other things. I like one of the ongoing issues with GenAI image generation is representing hands, right? Hands. A lot of image tools can't do it very well. They'll give you 6 fingers or 7 fingers or 2 fingers. So and so I like to always test the tool by asking it to generate a picture of a human hand to see what will happen. And note that, you know, it's showing you part of a human, even though it's not the full picture. I think the big thing they don't want to generate right now are the whole human, for some of the issues I mentioned earlier. But I actually I've done a bit of testing in Gemini with the hands. Actually, this hand kind of looks like mine. It's kind of funny. But you can see that it's actually pretty good. You know, like we got 5 fingers, which is I think what we're going for. And then, you know, it's got really nice knuckles and textures, and it actually almost looks, in this example, almost looks like photorealistic. It looks like it could be a photograph. So a hand, you know, this, or let's just do. Once you start generating images, you don't have to ask it to generate images at the beginning of your prompt. It'll know that you're trying to get more images generated. So again, here's another good example, very muscular person. Their hand is the right number of fingers. The hand does kind of look funny, but you know, no judgment. Some people's hands look certain ways. And yeah, one more thing to note, it's emphasizing or at least selecting white skin tone. So that is something you would have to, this happens over and over again, right? Like we have the dominant race, in this case, represented. In some cases, it can be gender as well. And so that's something that I wish was better with GenAI image tools, but we're still continuing to see these problems. Oh, sorry, I missed one of the comments. Pink rabbit in a quilt coat. Okay, let's go back to that. Go back to the rabbit librarian. Can you put them in a quilt coat and make them pink? Okay, let's see. And then we've got a very specific prompt that I will enter in next. Nice. That could be used in like marketing for, I don't know, like those outdoor companies. And the human hands thing makes me a little, some uncanny valley stuff in that. Seeing we're very close to time here, if not already over. So let's just honor the example here. This might get weird, folks. Oh, I should be reading the chat before it. A pink humanoid rabbit with human hands holding a rabbit that is wearing a mini quilt coat. So I think the lesson of this one is that, you know, the way the LLM is looking at the patterns in the language, it's probably not matching the human man hands with the pink humanoid rabbit the way we want it to. But maybe this is what you were looking for. I don't know. And then if we ask it to, and it's kind of, yeah, that rabbit is adorable though. Make the quilt coat multicolored. And it is a bit harder to, with some of these text-based apps, to edit a lot of the images that have come before. It'll just usually generate completely new ones. In this case, the image is very similar. I mean, now we have, I don't know what's going on with these arms, but you know, this is the rabbit hole, literally, that we're going down. And I appreciate the surrealism of all of this morning. Hope you have found it enjoyable. Let's go back to the PowerPoint real quick. I want to encourage you all to do your own testing on your own. So if you want to use Gemini going forward, consider what you're currently studying in class or a personal interest. Use these relevant subjects to form example prompts. I appreciated the examples today on coding as well as creating a proposal. Experiment and ask, you know, what functionality does it have? What's it not able to do? You might ask it what it is able and not able to do. Can you see yourself benefiting from Gemini in your everyday life, and can it support your context and needs at SEC? And as you go forward, you're going to know more tools than you've known before. Think about what makes this one preferential or another one preferential over other tools. Maybe you still like ChatGPT or Copilot or Claude more than Gemini. Maybe Gemini is a new one for you. I will say that even its ability to do hands well makes it more preferable for me than ChatGPT, which still struggles with the hands. So for images specifically. But yeah, those are some final parting questions for you to consider as you go forward. I want to thank you all for being here today. The link to this LibGuide with the recordings is in the chat. If you want to watch any of the other workshop recordings, they are all uploaded here and will continue to be uploaded. So yeah, thanks for being here. I hope you have a great day, and see you next time at the Perplexity session next week if you want to be there.
Thank you, Greg. That was a great workshop.
Thank you. See ya, everybody.